Okay. Hari Om.
हरि ओम।
हरि
हरि
ओम।
ओम।
Hari Om.
Hari Om,
हरि
good
ओम।
morning.
हरि ओम।
Hari Om Utsav from garden.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
हरि ओम। हरि ओम।
हरि ओम।
उत्सव सुबह से ही खूब इंतजारी में रहती हूँ मंगलवार।
मंगलवार को
रोज ही रहते हैं, सोम मंगल बुध बृहस्पति। मंगलवार गीता नया शुरू हो रहा है ना, 15वां।
Let's pull it out and we'll start. प्रातः स्मरामि हृदि संस्फुरदात्मतत्त्वम् सच्चित् सुखं परमहं सगतिं तुरीयम् यत् स्वप्नवेति
तुमको बोला लेके जाना। तुमको बोला अलमारी का चाबी लेके जाना, तो कौन बोल रहा है? तो तुमको बोला सुभद्रा अलमारी।
शान्तानां वीतरागिणां मुमुक्षूणामपेक्षोऽयम् आत्मबोधोऽधीयते साधनेभ्यो हि साक्षान्मुक्तसाधनम् पाकस्य वह्निवज्ञानम् विना मोक्षो न सिद्ध्यति. We'll chant from verses 1 to 5 of chapter 15. Chapter number 15, verses 1 to 5. Shri Bhagavanuvāca ऊर्ध्वमूलमधः शाखम् अश्वत्थं प्राहुरव्ययम् छन्दांसि यस्य पर्णानि यस्तं वेद न वेदवित्. श्रीभगवानुवाच ऊर्ध्वमूलमधः शाखम् अश्वत्थं प्राहुरव्ययम् छन्दांसि यस्य पर्णानि यस्तं वेद स वेदवित्. अधश्चोर्ध्वं प्रसृता तस्य शाखाः गुणप्रवृद्धा विषयप्रवालाः अधश्च मूलान्यनुसन्ततानि कर्मानुबन्धीनि मनुष्यलोके. अधश्चोर्ध्वं प्रसृता तस्य शाखाः गुणप्रवृद्धा विषयप्रवालाः अधश्च मूलान्यसुनन्ततानि कर्मानुबन्धीनि मनुष्यलोके. न रूपमस्येह तथोपलभ्ये लभ्यत् नान्तो न चादिर्न सम्प्रतिष्ठा. अश्वत्थमेनं सुविरूढमूलम् असङ्गशस्त्रेण दृढेन चित्वा न रूपमस्येह तथोपलभ्यते नान्तो न चादिर्न न च सम्प्रतिष्ठा अश्वत्थमेनं सुविरूढमूलम् असङ्गशस्त्रेण दृढेन चित्वा ततः पदं परिमार्गितव्यम् यस्मिन् गता न निवर्तानि भूयः न निवर्तान्ति भूयः तमेव चाद्यं पुरुषं प्रपद्ये यतः प्रवृत्तिः प्रसिता पुराणी ततः पदं परिमार्गित्वं यस्मिन् गता न निवर्तन्ति भूयः तमेव चाद्यं पुरुषं प्रपद्ये यतः प्रवृत्तिः प्रसिता पुराणी निर्मानमोहाचितसङ्गदोषा अध्यात्मनित्या विनिवर्तकामाः द्वन्द्वैः विमुक्त्वा सुखदुःखसङ्गैः गच्छन्त्यमूढा प्रमदव्ययं तत् निर्मानमोहाजितसङ्गदोषा अध्यात्मनित्या विनिवर्तकामाः द्वन्द्वैः विमुक्ताः सुखदुःखसङ्गैः गच्छन्त्यमूढा पदमव्ययं तत्. Okay, chapter 15, Purushottama Yoga. The 15th chapter is called Purushottama Yoga, Purusha Uttama Yoga, the yoga of Uttama Purusha, the supreme being. A beautiful name that we often give people in our lives, Purushottam. The beauty again of this tradition is that we even name our children after the gods. It's not blasphemous. We name our children after the gods. So Purushottama is representative of, particularly Lord Vishnu, Lord Rama, representative of God himself, Uttama Purusha. So as the name of the chapter suggests, the topic of the chapter is Uttama Purusha. The topic of the chapter is Brahman. And perhaps this is the most subtle chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. As far as how terse it is, it's almost Upanishadic in that sense. How terse it is, how much it has packed in just a couple of verses. So the chapter is not very long, it's just 20 verses long. But it has a lot packed into it. And there are four sections. So the 4 sections have been divided into Kshara, Akshara, and ultimately Uttama Purusha. Kshara means perishable, Akshara means imperishable, and Uttama Purusha means God beyond the perishable and the imperishable. The supreme being beyond both Kshara, perishable, and Akshara, imperishable. And the concluding thought of this chapter is Brahman pervades the Shara and the Akshara. Brahman pervades the perishable and the imperishable aspects of the world, but goes beyond them. God is not limited to this world. God is not limited to any particular place or any particular creation. All creation is merely a speck in the infinite expanse of God. God transcends your intellect. The Uttama Purusha transcends your intellect. You cannot simply conceive it through some ideas. So it throws out of the window all sectarian thought. If after becoming religious you start believing this is the right understanding of God, it throws it out of the window. He's saying Brahman is Uttama Purusha, God is Uttama Purusha, beyond your little intellect can comprehend. So as I said, it's not very long, it's just 20 verses long, but a lot of it is packed into these 20 verses. So the first 11 odd verses will deal with the idea of the perishable. The perishable represents the world, whether it's the macrocosm in terms of the larger world or the microcosm, the individual. Brahman pervades both the macrocosm and the microcosm. So without further ado, we'll chant verse number 1 and 2 together. Oh, incidentally, are there any questions before we start?
Yeah, Utsav, like you said, we should be disciplined to a certain extent. Physically, you very well understand. Mentally and emotionally, I would like you to explain a bit more.
You should be disciplined to a certain extent. I'm saying because I'm cutting us some slack. Disciplined, we have to be very disciplined. But if we put out the yardsticks, then all of us will think of it as a mountain.
Yeah, to a certain extent makes you comfortable. Like it makes it sounds easier. Yeah.
Jenny, but to make it sound easier, we're saying yes. Okay, let's at least start with a little bit. Some discipline is better than no discipline. Okay, so you said okay, physically you understand what it means, but what does it mean to have emotional discipline? What does it mean to have emotional discipline? What does it mean to have intellectual discipline? See, essentially, it boils down to an acute awareness of your feelings and thoughts. And what kind of feelings are you allowing? What kind of feelings are you not allowing? Nobody's perfect. You cannot control what kind of feeling comes up in you. You cannot control what kind of thought comes up in you. Right? Your vasanas will determine that. But what you can do is whether you allow it to grow, whether you cut it right there. So that acute awareness of okay, what kind of thought and feeling is helping me on my journey? What kind of thought or feeling is not helping me? What kind of feelings do I want to cultivate? What kind of feelings do I not want to cultivate? What kind of emotions do I want to have towards people? What kind of emotions do I not want to? Everyone feels jealousy. How much do you water is the question. Everyone feels greed. How much do you water? It is the question. So you're the gardener. You decide how much to water, how much not to water. So 100% discipline means having that ability to cut it right then and there. Little bit discipline means it may not be possible. 100% discipline may not be possible, but at least don't lie to yourself. That's the first thing. Don't lie to yourself. Be honest with yourself about your thoughts and feelings, about your inner constitution. Because only when you acknowledge the kind of feelings and thoughts you hold will you be able to take any remedial action, or will you be able to implement any discipline. So 0% discipline is at least acknowledge, okay, it's there, okay, I felt it. Thereafter bringing about that so naturally how you help your mind in staying in a positive state also counts towards discipline. So that not only for your physical body, but waking up early, sleeping early is as much nourishment for your mind as it is for your body. What kind of stimuli you expose it to is as much a nourishment for your mind in fact, more of a nourishment for your mind than a body. What kind of things are you watching? What kind of things are you taking in? What kind of stimuli are you taking in? Because that in turn is challenging your mind to feel and think a certain way, right? What kind of company you are keeping? So it's not just physical. When we talk about all of this as part of discipline, it in fact is more to do with your mind than your body. Ultimately, it boils down to an acute awareness of what's happening inside you. The spiritual journey is a rehabilitation of the mind. The disease is not outside, the disease is inside. So rehabilitating the mind, replenishing the mind, refreshing the mind is the purpose of all of this knowledge, all of this discipline. And you have to do it patiently. You have to do it with dedication, consistently. You'll stumble, you'll falter, but you have to keep going. That's the idea. That's why we say little discipline. Okay. Further questions? If not, we'll chant verses 1 and 2 together. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdhva Shakham Ashvatham Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavid Adhaschordhvam Prasita Tasya Shakhaha Gunapravriddha Vishaya Pravalaha Adhascha Mulanyanu Karmanubandhini Manushya Loke. Chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita begins with a metaphor. Verses 1 and 2 talk about, in fact, even 3, talk about the metaphor of the Ashwatha, the giant peepal tree. It's a giant fig tree, and in the culture, it is held in deep regard. It is a tree. It's considered very sacred. In fact, the root of the tree is traditionally considered to be the Lord, and you'll find a lot of people meditating under a tree like the Ashwatha. This particular verse, this particular idea is actually taken from the Upanishads, taken from the Kathopanishad. So what we'll see in this verse number 1 and 2, the idea is taken from the Kathopanishad. So what does he say? The Blessed Lord said, the Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, they speak of the imperishable Ashwatha, the giant peepal tree, with root above and branches below, whose leaves are hymns of the Vedas. He who knows that gains the wisdom of the Vedas. And in verse number 2, he says, its branches spread below and above, nourished by the gunas, with buds as sense objects, and roots stretch below as actions binding men in the world. So he gives us this image of an Ashwatha tree. And not just any Ashwatha tree, he talks about an upside down Ashwatha tree with roots above and branches below. They speak. Who speaks? As I said, this thought comes from the Upanishads. So when the Lord himself says they speak, he's attributing this symbolism, this idea to the Upanishad. In particular, you'll see this idea in the Kathopanishad. For those of you who have read or intend to read it, in the Kathopanishad, you come across the idea of this inverted Ashwatha tree. So these speak of this imperishable Ashwatha with root above, branches below. These are hymns of Vedas. He who knows that gains the wisdom of the Vedas. The Ashwatha is a representative of this created world. Ashwatha means that which does not remain the same. So that which is constantly undergoing change. Symbolic of the world. The world is a changing phenomenon, constantly changing phenomenon. Change might not be visible, it's happening slowly. You don't even realize through the course of the day but suddenly it's evening. Change has been slowly, slowly, slowly. Evening didn't suddenly happen. It's happening slowly. You don't realize through the course of the night, suddenly it's morning. So the change may not always be visible moment to moment, but there is change happening. So this world that we live in is a constantly changing phenomenon. Nothing is fixed. Nothing is permanent. And that is what is represented by Ashwatha. Also, it has a very long life. Ashwatha trees last for centuries. So in that sense, it is eternal. So this world, first of all, it is constantly changing. Second of all, it is eternal. God knows when this world began, and God knows how long it will last. And when I say this world, I mean this entire universe. It appears to have an extremely long existence. Its beginning or end is unclear. So in that sense, it is the Ashwatha. Generations come and go, and they say, my grandfather used to meditate under this tree. In that sense, they say the Ashwatha is eternal. It has a very long life. So this Ashwatha represents the world. Now the world is comprised of, we studied this before, the world is comprised of spirit and matter, Prakriti and Purusha. Purusha and Prakriti. Now the reason now Purusha is the root of the world in a sense. Purusha is the source of the world. This world has come about. In that sense, Brahman is the cause of the world. You've all come across the analogy of the rope and the snake. This world is like a snake superimposed upon the rope. The rope is the cause for the snake in that sense. In that sense, we say Brahman is the cause of the world, it's the root of the world, it's the very source of the world. So, Brahman, the Purusha, is the root. So, the root of this Ashwatha tree is represented by Brahman. And you have an upside down tree because you're trying to give a sense of respect, a sense of position to that which is the source, the highest, the subtlest. Just like in a family tree, you don't start with the names of the oldest people at the bottom. When you give a family tree, you'll give the the earlier generation on top, then the later generation, then the later generation, then the later generation. So those who have to be regarded are placed on top. Similarly, in that sense, the root, which is regarded as the Brahman, as highest itself, is placed on top. And from this root arise multifold branches, innumerable branches. Now, these branches represent all the objects and beings of the world, all the knowledges of the world. The root is one, the branches are manifold. Purusha is one, Prakriti is manifold. So the branches represent the variety of things and beings and knowledges in the world, whose leaves are the hymns of the Vedas. All the root and the branches nourish the leaves, and the leaves contain the knowledge of the world, not only of the world, but also of the root. So the Vedas represent the collective knowledge of the world. All that is the root and the branches flow into the leaves, symbolized by the Vedas. So the collective knowledge of the world is represented by the Vedas, shown as the leaves. He who knows this gains the wisdom of the Vedas. He who knows what? He who understands that this world is a combination of Prakriti and Purusha. He who understands that the root is Brahman and the branches are Prakriti, matter. And this world is nothing but a play of Prakriti and Purusha. He who knows that understands the wisdom of the Vedas. And he continues in verse number 2, he talks further. Its branches spread below and above, nourished by the gunas and the qualities. So the branches we talk about, Prakriti that we talk about, spread below and above. Some branches seem to be moving in an upward direction, some branches seem to be moving in a downward direction. And they are nourished by the gunas. What does he mean? All of Prakriti is nothing but a play of the gunas. So the branches that we see, the root has no gunas, but the branches are nourished by the gunas. Purusha has no gunas. Purusha is gunatita. That's what we've studied in chapter number 14. But the branches, Prakriti, is nothing but an expression of the gunas. Some of these gunas, the sattvic gunas, move in an upward direction, means move towards the root, move towards Brahman. Some of the gunas move in a downward direction. The tamasic gunas move in a downward direction. So the variety of branches move in various directions depending on the kind of gunas. But essentially, the branches are nourished, are composed, are a product of gunas. With buds as sense objects and roots stretch below as actions binding men in the world. Another interesting symbolism out here. The sense objects are represented as buds. Buds are what? In any tree, in any plant, a bud is a reproductive part of the plant. Either from a bud, a further new branch, a shoot will extending the plant, or from the bud will grow a flower, right, which will lead to further reproduction. So a bud is from where this tree expands. You can think of it as that way. So the Ashvatha, this world, this phenomenon of this creation, it expands at the point of the buds, at sense objects. So these sense objects are sort of perhaps the catalyst which will lead to further creation, which will lead to further multiplication of Prakriti. All attachment, all entanglement, all procreation and creation happens through your interaction with sense objects. Your interaction with sense objects leads to new desires, leads to pleasure, joy, sorrow, pain, which leads to further entanglement. So your interaction with sense objects is indicated as a source with which this world further expands. This world, in a sense, reproduces. So with buds as sense objects and roots stretch below as actions binding men in the world. Another important thing out here to point out is the word roots, mulani. In the previous verse, he uses the word mulaha. Out here, he uses the word moolam, urdhva moolam, root above. Moolam is singular, mulani is plural. So roots stretch below as actions binding men in the world. What are these roots he's talking about? Now, the primary root we've talked about. The primary root is Brahman. But from Brahman from the primary root arises a variety of secondary roots. And these secondary roots are in fact what keep a plant stuck to the ground. See, any plant that has a single root. What's a plant that has a single root? Any plant that anyone does gardening? If you do what gardening? If you eat vegetables, you'll know which plant has a single root.
Carrot, radish.
Who picks up carrots? If you have to take kids to the garden, you'll make sure they don't go close to the carrots because it's so easy to pluck out. The primary root is not what binds. The primary root doesn't bind. Primary roots is very, very difficult to uproot. A plant with secondary roots is what actually causes bondage, makes it very difficult. Easy when you're doing weeding, we're told when you're weeding the ground, you have to take out all the roots. If you don't take out the roots, if you just pluck the plant from the surface, they grow back. And the greater the network of roots of a plant, the more difficult it is. It's a hassle. One of the reasons why Some grasses are very difficult to weed out, is because they have an extensive network of roots, the root network. So it's not so much the primary root, like a plant with the primary root only, like a carrot or an onion or whatever, is very easy to take out. Hmm. But those with secondary roots, those with a lot of um, a network of roots, are very, very difficult to weed out. Almost impossible. And what are these roots? These represent actions binding men in the world. Your actions, meaning your desires, meaning your thoughts, meaning your vasanas. These secondary roots, which he's talking about in plural, represents your vasanas. So even though the primary root is one, we have gone on to develop in this world, in this creation, a variety of secondary roots, our vasanas, which represent our entanglement in the world, which represent our bondage in the world. Our vasanas bind us, create all sorts of attachment, and keep us bound, keep us entangled. So if you have a vision of this, if you have this collective vision of the world is nothing but an Ashwatha tree. The primary root being one, the secondary roots binding a variety of branches and leaves. This is your world. If you have this vision, if you have this understanding, you're getting what the Vedas are hinting at. You're getting what Vedanta is guiding you towards. You are on the path to gaining the wisdom of the Vedas. So what does he say in verse number 3? He continues and he concludes this metaphor. Verse number 3. Sarupamasyeha tathopalabhyate nanto na chade na cha sampratishtha ashwatthaменam suvirudhamulam asangashastreణ dradhena chitva na rupamasyeha tathopalabhyate nanto na chade na cha sampratishtha ashwatthaменam suvirudhamulam asangashastreణ dridhena chitva. Its form is not perceived here such, neither its end nor its origin, nor clear foundation. Its form is not perceived here such, neither its end nor origin, nor clear foundation. Having cut asunder this firmly rooted Ashwatha, this giant fig tree with the strong acts of non-attachment. And he actually continues in verse number 4. So we'll chant verse number 4. Tatah padam tat parimargitvam yasmin gatana nivartanti bhuyah tameva chadyam purusham prapadye yatah pravritti prasrita purani tatah padam tat parimargitvam yasmin gatana nivartanti bhuyah tameva chadyam purusham prapadye yatah pravritti prasitas purani. Having cut asunder this firmly rooted Ashwatha with the strong acts of non-attachment, he says, then that goal should be sought. Whither having gone, they do not return. I seek refuge in that primeval Purusha, the supreme being alone, where from streamed forth ancient activity. We'll take it slowly. We'll explain. So he says, its form is neither perceived nor perceived here as such, neither its end nor origin nor clear form. What is he talking about? This Ashwatha tree, the tree, its form means the tree's form. The tree's form is not perceived here as such. You don't actually get the full picture. You can't see the full picture with your eyes. What we're talking about, the primary root, the secondary roots, what you see primarily is this physical body. Forget the roots. You don't even see your mind and its thoughts and its emotions. You can't see another person's feelings and thoughts. You have to be very sensitive to know, understand what the other person is feeling. You have to be very sharp to understand what the other person is thinking. So from this creation, we see actually very little of it. Its form is not perceived here such. It's almost, it's very difficult to read another person's vasanas as such. It requires time and insight. Forget Brahman, forget the primary root. You can't conceive it. You can't see it with your eyes. You can't even conceive it with your intellect. So its form is not perceived here as such. The Ashwatth has its whole. We only see a part of it. We only see the physical form of this world. We don't see the non-physical form at all. Its form is not perceived here. Neither its end nor origin or clear foundation. We don't know where this Ashwatth came from. We don't know where it's going. And we don't know on what it stands. What is sustaining this world? We don't quite understand. We don't quite understand what keeps this world going. Yes, philosophically, you can talk about it. You can discuss Vedanta philosophy about it. Vedanta says your vasanas sustain the world. That means no vasanas, no world. There's no clear foundation. We don't quite know. Yes, we've landed up in this world. We've landed up in this phenomena. But what's actually holding it together? What is the foundation of it? It's not clear. It's a mystery. It's a mystery. Investigating this mystery is philosophy. Investigating this mystery is Vedanta. But no doubt it is a mystery. Where have we come from? Where are we going? How did the world come about and how will it end? What is going to be its end? What is its origin? It's not clear. All a mystery. Those who fall in love with this mystery fall in love with the spiritual process. Most of us are just happy being in ignorance, not heeding this mystery. Most of us are happy just going on with our lives. There's anyway so much to think about. Don't give me more to think about it, stuff. Huh? All this mystery you keep to yourself. I have lots of things to deal with. You're born with a golden spoon. Now don't talk to me about life. Lots to think about. I don't have time for all of this.
एक मेरे को
sage is-
नींबू वाले कांटे नहीं मिल रहे छोटे छोटे ना
A sage is one who has fallen in love with this mystery. A sage is one to whom uncovering this, resolving this, is his purpose. What is the origin? What is the end? What is the foundation? What is the nature of this world? I need to uncover it. If you're not prompted to ask this question today, if you're not prompted to think about it today, don't worry. Park it. But remember it. Keep it at the back of your mind. At some point, you will have to come to this question. At some point, you will have to come to these ideas. You see this created world in front of you. What is it? You may not have the question. Your child might have the question. The first time he studies geography, the first time he studies physics, the first time you must promote that mystery. In fact, I'm beginning to think having a child is like having a second chance at life. You can think, you can use the curiosity of your child as an opportunity, or your grandchild. Some of you are at grandchild time. You can use the curiosity of your grandchild as an opportunity. Still remember, the first couple of times I studied geography, it was fascinating. Even thinking about it right now is like sending goosebumps. The fact that we are hanging in space. Hmm. We're hanging in space right now. Yes, there's a force called gravity that is keeping me stuck to this chair, but actually, this chair is sitting on a ball of mass which is hanging in space. How big is this space? Infinitely big. Not even a dot. We are not even a dot in the universe. Mystery. I think it's Sadhguru who said, Sadhgurus of the belief that, now that the world is getting so automated and all this AI and all is going to take care of all of our mechanical tasks, it'll give people a chance to explore more of these, the deeper realms of life. Give a chance for people to explore these mysteries of life in a more meaningful way. I think this is what he says often. Actually, I was hearing something of his. So he's very optimistic of where we are as a world. It may seem like, we're headed towards a doomsday, but he's very optimistic. He's saying everyone will have a chance to become a philosopher. Everyone will have a chance to explore some of these deeper questions of life, because everything else will be taken care of. Machines will help you so you can do something better with your life. Shivendra Nagarji says there'll come a time in a couple of decades where by 40 either you'll be completely a burnt out druggie or you'll be a philosopher. The stimulation of the world is such, it'll create two extremes of people. It'll either create those who've made a complete mess of it or those who are completely detached. Either way, however you look at it, whether it's Sadhguru or it's Shivendra Nagar or whoever, what's exciting is that perhaps there'll be a renewed interest or a greater interest in this. What is the mystery of this world? Its form is not perceived as such, neither its end, nor origin, nor clear foundation. It's a mystery. But as far as the spiritual process goes, the purpose of the spiritual path is to attain liberation. Moksha is to attain union with the primary root. So he says, having cut asunder this firmly rooted Ashvatha with the strong acts of non-attachment. You have to remove your bondage. You have to remove these secondary roots. You have to weed out your bondage to the world. You have to cut it. So this Ashvatha, this metaphor of the world, it has all these branches and roots which represent your entanglement, your attachment, your involvement in the world, which is keeping you stuck in this cycle of birth and death, which is keeping you stuck in this process of generation and regeneration and regeneration. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. He says, cut it with what? The strong acts of non-attachment. Asanga shastrena. Non-attachment, detachment is like an axe. It's a shastra. It's an axe. It's an axe which helps you cut off these terrible, terrible roots. Detachment helps you eliminate vasanas. See, often the question comes, how do I eliminate my vasanas? There's no amount of experience which will give you a fulfillment, a contentment, satiation. What will what helps you eliminate vasanas, what helps you rise above vasanas is detachment. And what is detachment? Detachment is, you've all heard it before. Detachment is attachment to the higher. Attach yourself to the higher, you gain detachment from the lower. And this detachment is like an axe. It cuts off, it severs your entanglement with the lower. So having cut asunder this firmly rooted Ashwatha with detachment, your purpose in life, having understood that this is your world with its multifold roots and branches and entanglements and attachments, your job on the spiritual journey is to arm yourself with detachment, arm yourself with the knowledge of the self, arm yourself with detachment in order to cut off these entanglements. And when you're able to cut off these entanglements, then you'll be able to set your ultimate goal. Then what? After having gained detachment, then that goal should be sought. What goal? The goal of liberation, the goal of moksha. Whither having gone, they do not return again. Liberation, moksha, samadhi, whatever you want to call it, the state of no return. Right now, when you go, you come back again. Dehant. Dehant is a going where you come back again. Because देह का अंत हो रहा है और किसी का अंत नहीं हो रहा है, सिर्फ इस देह का अंत हो रहा है. But when you gain samadhi, that's a going from where you don't come back. So then samadhi should be sought, then liberation should be sought. See, these are subtle ways in which he indicates you can't jump to samadhi, you can't jump to moksha, you can't jump to meditation. Detachment is a precursor to meditation. Meditation without detachment is a mockery. He's not telling you not to meditate. He's not telling you don't pursue samadhi. Yes, your goal should be to turn meditative. Your goal should be to attain moksha. But he's saying, wait. Before you seek that goal, arm yourself with detachment. Before you reach your state. These are all yardsticks which you have to measure yourself with. This is a marathon. So having armed yourself with detachment, then seek the goal of liberation, where having gone, you do not return again. And representing that ultimate spiritual seeker, he says, I seek refuge in that primeval Purusha, that supreme being, Purusham, alone wherefrom streamed forth ancient activity, the very source of this world. One that existed eternally, one who was the very cause of the initial action. All action is prompted, is enabled by the self, the Atman, Brahman. No action is possible. So primeval activity means from the very first action itself, the origin, the source of this world, Brahman. So I seek refuge in that Brahman. So let's take a step back. This world is like the Ashwatha tree. This world is like the Ashwatha tree, composed of Prakriti and Purusha. Purusha, Brahman, is the primary root, and Prakriti is everything else. Prakriti is the branches, the secondary roots, the leaves, the this, the that, the buds. And this Prakriti is nourished by gunas. And these secondary roots are what bind you, or keep you bound in this world. And he's giving us that clear indication what you have to do. You have to cut it asunder. You have to slash your entanglement in this world with detachment. See, you may think this is very morbid. Even for a happy life, you have to be detached. Forget samadhi. If you're attached, you will suffer. I think Yasho just posted the video right now. I was watching it this morning of decluttering. What is decluttering? Decluttering is a forced detachment. It's the first step of detachment. It's a forced detachment.
That
You
also we are struggling.
start there. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying in the video. At least after hearing me, you'll go back home and empty your cupboard at least. See, attachment leads to accumulation, and you don't even realize it. Attachment leads to accumulation. And what you'll realize is when you live a life of attachment, you reach a state called neutralization. Neutralization is where something is not having it is not giving you happiness. But the thought of parting with it is creating. We're talking about clothes. This is not only true for clothes, this is true for people also. Having it is bringing you no joy. But the thought of separating from it. So forget samadhi and all. I'm saying detachment is necessary even for your own happiness, day-to-day happiness. Because if you live in attachment, it leads to accumulation, it leads to neutralization. Don't forget 100% detachment. Try a little bit. How do you try a little bit? You decide for yourself what are your boundaries. You decide for yourself how much do you need. Set a practical limit. And there's no one right limit. Someone may need 1 crore, someone may need 10 crore, someone may need 20 lakhs. Someone may need 3 watches, someone may need 10 watches, someone may need 20 watches, someone may need 1 watch. No one's here to judge. Everybody has their own, but you set a limit. Otherwise, see, as Oliver Gold, yesterday in the class, we read this. I don't know if you noticed, but towards the end of class, we read this quote by Oliver Goldsmith. He says, "Where wealth accumulates, men decay. Where wealth accumulates, men decay." Accumulation of wealth is not necessarily a certain quantum of wealth. Accumulation of wealth means attachment to that wealth. No matter what the quantum. No matter what the quantum. See, the beauty is if you are detached, you can have as much. The quantum is not a problem. But you have to be honest with yourself. What is your relationship with the sense objects around you, the people around you? Let's deal with sense objects first. Is it a relationship of attachment or is it a relationship of detachment? And what is a measure of detachment? A measure of detachment is the willingness of being without it. The test of your detachment is your ability to be without it. You can enjoy all the comforts so long as you can do without it. Please enjoy the best of comforts so long as you can not lose your sense of well-being when there's a load shedding for 2 hours. So these are, again, it comes back, it reminds me of the question we began this class with, the disciplines. These are the disciplines we have to keep in our mind. This is an intellectual discipline. Am I attached or not? An awareness of attachment itself is 5% detachment. An awareness of attachment itself is 5% detachment. 10% detachment. So forget the ultimate goal of samadhi, even for your well-being, even for your happiness, your day-to-day joy, your day-to-day lightness. When you live in a spirit of detachment, and I won't use the word detachment because it gets gets entangled. I like the word he uses out here. Asangaha, non-attachment. Detachment, people start having all sorts of ideas. Asangaha, non-attachment. It's a beautiful, beautiful antidote to living. It's an antidote to sorrow. You live with lightness. You live with ease when you have this sense of asangaha. And for those on the spiritual journey, armed with asangaha, armed with this shastra of asangaha, then step into the deeper waters, the serious waters of samadhi, from where you don't return again. With that thought, we'll conclude today. This itself was a topic in itself. So I think there's no point in starting something new. Right now it's already 8:30. So I'm happy to conclude today. We'll continue on Thursday, on the 30th, with the next couple of verses. So I'm happy to take up any questions if there are.
There is no question, but it was I think a very, very inspiring class. अगर एक बूंद भी knowledge ले ले आज, तो I think we'll be successful. Too
Indeed,
inspiring.
It's the subtlest knowledge. So I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, Utsav, continuing with what Rashmi said, when I started my Vedanta journey many years back, so I used to cry every class when I was near this knowledge, when I was with my guru. So today also again I cried. So it's really, really nice.
उत्सव, एक बात
जी।
बोलना चाहती हूँ कि ये वाला श्लोक बहुत बार मैं पढ़ा है, समझा है, और पर समझ में नहीं आया था. मेरा बहुत मन था मैं इसको अच्छे से समझूं, और आज आपने इतना अच्छे से बताया है कि अभी क्लास खत्म होने के बाद में थोड़ी देर बाद फिर हम इसको सुनूंगी. मैं बहुत बढ़िया से एक्सप्लेन किया है. असंग ऊर्ध्वमूलक अधः शाखा. थैंक यू सो मच.
हरिओम.
हरिओम.
Any questions? The Bhagavad Gita has so much knowledge packed into it. You can spend your entire life studying this one text. Shivji was telling me he recently went to Kanpur, and Kanpur he met a group of people he was invited by. And they've been chanting. This is a chanting group of the Bhagavad Gita, and they've been chanting the Bhagavad Gita for years and years and years. But only chanting, and they never had anyone to explain it to them in this systematic manner. And he was telling me how delighted they were to hear some of these verses, read some of these ideas, and actually make sense of what they've been chanting all these years. So that's the purpose of this class, to patiently, slowly, quietly take these ideas, take these thoughts. Yes, there is lots of repetition, and that's the Gita. Same idea over and over and over again. But the idea is to bring about the beauty of these verses. All these verses are like, Bhagavad Gita is called a garland. It's a garland, beautiful to look at. It smells wonderful as you approach it. And the core of it is nectar. The core of any flower in a garland is nectar. So getting to the depth of any of these verses, any of these ideas, these themes, we'll find the ultimate knowledge. So with that thought, we'll conclude today and see you on Thursday. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Hariom.
Thank you.